So once you know that the SAT is a game, you can start looking at the individual sections of the test as discrete sort of mini games that you want to learn how to play. Now, the math section and the grammar section, I'm telling you, are the first places to go. So if you're looking to get 50 quick points, you're going to the math section and you're going to the grammar section. But if you're someone who's already doing really well in the grammar part of the test, but you still need some points in the reading section, pay attention. I'm about to show you how a question works, how a type of question works. If you know how to identify this question and deploy this strategy, you're getting some of the hardest questions right on the SAT reading section. Let's go. So here we have a passage. This is considered a hard question, and you'll notice that it asks about the function of the underlying sentence, the function of the underlying sentence. Okay, so I'm going to introduce this strategy before we read the question because I want you to read it with the strategy in mind. I oftentimes will ask people when I teach this topic, what's the purpose of a roof? So answer for yourself, what's the purpose of a roof? I'm sure you're going to say something about the weather or the stuff underneath the roof, right? So you don't, when you talk about function, mention the materials of a roof, at least not immediately and directly. You say things like, well, it's to protect my stuff from the rain, or, you know, it's something like it's to keep the snow out of the house, right? So you're immediately talking about things above and below, okay? That is how a function or purpose question works on the SAT. The information right above and right below is the difference between the best answer and the second best answer. So let's keep that in mind as we read this passage. We'll think about the information right above the underlined piece and right below the underlined piece. And if you do that over and over again on the SAT, you cut through a bunch of stuff and make this question way, way easier. And this is considered a hard question. All right, let's read with that in mind. Okay. So the introduction is always useful. I'll read that as well. Don't skip introductions. You will gain points if you just read introductions. The following text is from Edith Wharton's 1905 novel, The House of Mirth. Lily Bart and a companion are walking through a park. Lily had no real intimacy with nature, but she had a passion for the appropriate and could be keenly sensitive to a scene which was the fitting background of her own sensations. Can we just pause and say that's a really weird sentence for most people to read? To say you have a passion for the appropriate, that's going to throw a lot of people off. If you don't have a good strategy and you're reading that sentence, you're going to think, okay, what the heck is that about? And you're going to waste time trying to understand a phrase that basically doesn't matter for this question. Okay, second sentence. The landscape outspread below her seemed an enlargement of her present mood, and she found something of herself in its calmness, its breath, its long free reaches. Okay, so that, again, is a pretty eloquent sentence, and worrying too much about its detail is a waste of your time. Third sentence. On the nearer slopes, the sugar maples wavered like pyres of light. Lower down was a massing of gray orchards, and here and there, the lingering green of an oak grove. Okay, beautiful. Thank you, Edith Wharton. So we're asked about that middle sentence. We're asked, what is the function of that middle sentence? Okay, so let's get rid of some answers here. It creates a detailed image of a physical setting of a scene. Now, that sounds pretty good about the whole passage, but if you look closely, the third sentence gives us actual physical details, right? It talks about the orchards, the colors, the trees, all that stuff. So does that sentence that we've been asked about describe the physical setting? The answer is no, it doesn't. The passage has some physical details. That sentence does not. Second sentence, it establishes that a character is experiencing an inner conflict. Well, if you look at the sentence, there's nothing about conflict. It says calmness, breath, right? So that's not an internal conflict. But here we get to the two answer choices that I want you to pay attention to. Most people who are scoring well in the reading section are going to be able to get it down to these two answers, although A is pretty tempting. So C says it makes an assertion that the next sentence expands upon, And D says it illustrates an idea that is introduced in the previous sentence. Okay, so first of all, let's notice that a function question, like we said, is about above and below. So these answer choices, which reference the information right above or right below, seem like good answers right off the bat. That's great. Now, the difference is C talks about the next sentence. D talks about the previous sentence. Okay, well, what is an assertion? An assertion is a claim. Does this sentence make a claim that is then expanded on? Or, as answer choice D says, does it illustrate an idea that is introduced in the previous sentence? So the difference is D says that there was an idea, something like an assertion, in the previous sentence. C says that the underlined piece is the idea or assertion which is then expanded upon, right? So you could say that basically the difference between an assertion and idea is negligible and not really very important, right? An assertion is some kind of an idea, right? To make an assertion or illustrate an idea obviously is a little different, but those two words are basically the same thing for our purposes. Okay, so is there an assertion here that this next sentence expands upon? Maybe a little bit, but if you think about answer choice D, what is the idea or even the assertion from the previous sentence? Well, whatever it means for her to have a passion for the appropriate and could be keenly sensitive to a scene, meaning that you could pay attention to a scene. Well, that's what we get in this sentence. We get a landscape that seems like her mood. Okay, you don't have to get all the fancy language to see in the first half of the underlined sentence, a landscape seemed an enlargement of her present mood. Okay, so the idea from the previous sentence is now explained. And this is why answer choice D is the right one. Okay, so it's really, really difficult to do all of that work unless you have a framework for understanding this question. And the SAT is a game. Your framework is know what a function question does, cross off answer choices that are the worst ones, and then home in on the details between those two answer choices. Doesn't make it easy and slam dunk like the math section can be or the writing section can be. But it does make it such that if you're perceptive and you're paying attention to what matters and sort of blocking out what doesn't matter, notice we don't really even care what it means to have a passion for the appropriate. Doesn't matter. We don't care about some of the fancy language here because we're focusing on the game that you have to play to get this question right. So that's how function questions work, above and below, home in on details after you've crossed off the worst answers. If you do that, you're going to get more questions right and you're going to get a better score in the SAT.